Am I an idiot for deactivating my niece's social media when she refused to listen to me? I have custody of my sister's daughter, a 13-year-old. She became old enough for social media a few months ago and I let her create profiles on her birthday. I said the condition was that she make her accounts private and only accept friend requests from people she knows. She showed me her accounts, which were set to private, so I believed her. I also followed her, so I could see what she was posting, which she agreed to. A couple weeks ago I decided to check her profile, as I hadn't seen one of her posts in a while, despite her being on there all the time. It's public, not private, so she changed her settings, and I'm no longer following her. I'm assuming I was soft blocked as I can still see her profile. However, the part that concerned me most was her bio. She has her full date of birth, full name, town name, ethnicity, other info about her, and photos of her and her friends in their school uniforms, with the school crest visible. I told her why this was a problem, but she responded that it wasn't a problem. I told her she has two options: take an internet safety course, or deactivate all her profiles. She chose the first option. I paid for a short course, an estimated 4 hours to complete. It took a couple days, at which point she told me she'd taken the course and passed with flying colors, even showing me the certificate that said she passed. I gave it a day, checked her profile, and it was exactly the same, except I was blocked, and had to go on incognito to check it. I also checked the course website and it said that you, as in the user, spent 17 minutes on the course. That was the last straw, so I told her to deactivate everything, and I put software on the PC, which I've used to block social media. I can't do much about apps on her phone, but it's something. She's told my mother what I've done, and Mom is outraged, says I had no right to take away her social media, that I should reinstate it, and apologize for being paranoid and controlling and let her make her own choices about her personal safety. I've said she's 13 with no concept of internet safety. She can have social media back when she understands how any aspect of online safety works. My mother feels this is unreasonable and that I have moved the goalposts as she completed the course like I asked, but there's no way she completed a 4-hour course in less than 20 minutes. Mom says she's 13, not a little kid, and I need to trust that she knows what she's doing. I said she has to earn that trust first, and Mom again accused me of moving the goalposts, and said her completing the course should have earned that trust. Am I an idiot for not letting her have social media? Edit. To be clear, this is more about my conflict with my mother and her accusations of me being controlling. I don't expect anyone to call a 13-year-old in a hole. Also, to clarify a few things, I'm a woman. My niece's mother is my older sister. My sister and my niece's father are both uninvolved in her life, which is why I have sole custody and have legally adopted her. The mother I mentioned above is my mother, who is also my niece's grandmother. Update: it's been a few days. I read through every comment on my original post and saw all your feedback, particularly the parts about my niece being unlikely to trust me after this. I sat my niece down one final time. I talked to her again about all the information she wanted to add, trying to explain again why it was a bad idea to put her full name, her date of birth, location, and whatever else online. She still didn't believe that it could be dangerous, so I asked her what information she wanted to put exactly. She told me. I googled it. The entire first page of results was all about her, or my sister, her mother, or me. It showed her school website, as she's been mentioned in the newsletter. Her full name also brought up her personal phone number, and a website for details of the adoption. I then showed her what was linked with my name, despite my very careful social media presence. The results included a background check website that listed all my former names, my number, my address, where we currently live, and more behind a paywall. She now completely understands what I was trying to tell her. We worked out a new deal. She's allowed social media, but instead of all the information she wanted to add, she's only allowed her star sign and that she's a minor. She can give a location, but it has to be our county, not our town. Her profile will be private and she can only link up with people she knows IRL. I will follow her from a fake account, so her friends don't see her aunt on her friend lists. These restrictions will lessen in due time. If she does anything to screw it up, it all gets deactivated again, and we won't even revisit the topic of social media until she's 15. As for my mother, I called her and told her to back off. I said that I have custody of my niece, so I make the decisions, and Mom doesn't get to make that harder for me. That if she really thought my niece putting her full name, date of birth, location, etc. online was safe, she's an idiot. And it pisses me off that the only times I hear from her, it's so she can tell me that I'm doing something wrong, when she herself was given the chance to adopt my niece and refused. Mom essentially said that she can't believe I'd treat her like this and I shouldn't expect to hear from her for a while. Not an idiot. You can never be too careful online. There's some dangerous people out there these days. Any shred of information in the wrong hands could lead a bad person right to your door. As a teen, I would resent all the control you put on her online life, but now as an adult I know how essential it is. Not an idiot. This is a good update. My school used to use this tactic. The 13-year-olds would have an assembly each year where the ed teacher used to show us on the big screen what came up when our names were Googled. I think making it visual rather than just saying scary things is definitely the best approach, and I'm glad you and your niece are back on the same page. Do you think the aunt was out of line? Let me know in the comments. Now, you won't want to miss this next story. Am I an idiot for checking my blood sugar at my desk when my coworker has a severe blood phobia? I, male 24, enjoy my job and have two coworkers, Megan, female 25, and our new coworker James, male 23, who just started. The three of us each have our own office space, but because we have to frequently collaborate on work throughout the day, we are often at each other's desks. I am a type 1 diabetic. I give insulin and check my blood sugar throughout the day as needed. I give insulin through a pump, so that's not an issue. Checking my blood sugar involves pricking my finger to draw a drop of blood. The blood gets sucked up into a test strip that is connected to a glucose meter, and the meter displays the reading. The whole process takes like 10 seconds. I was checking my blood sugar in my office right when James walked over. Immediately, his face went white. He looked like he was about to puke or faint or maybe both. I was like, "Dude, are you okay?" He told me that he has a major blood and needle phobia and gets therapy for it. I explained what I was doing and why it was necessary, and he said it's freaky that I have to make myself bleed multiple times a day. He told me he never wants to accidentally walk in on me checking my blood sugar again because he could pass out. I said that if I'm checking my blood sugar and hear him coming over, I can call out a warning like, "Give me a sec." He said that won't work. Just knowing that I'm doing that just before he comes over is enough to freak him out, and that he would be stressed that I might not hear him walking over. He told me I should check it in the bathroom from now on. I told him that I don't think I should have to do that and it's unsanitary. He said another option was if I only check my blood sugar at certain times, say 9 a.m., 12 p.m. before eating lunch, and 4 p.m., that way he'd know when to avoid me. I said these things can't always be predicted. I'll need to check if I feel my blood sugar going high or low. He said he understands that I have diabetes, but that he also has a special need, his blood phobia. That needs to be accommodated, and that he doesn't want to have to avoid me at work and only talk to Megan for fear he might see me checking again. He said he'll talk to HR about this and that he'll tell them that I refuse to compromise with him. That was last Thursday before the holidays. Tomorrow I'm thinking of going to talk to HR before James does, but first I need to know that I'm in the right here. So am I the idiot for not being more accommodating of James' blood, needle phobia, and checking my blood sugar as needed at my desk? Edit. To clarify something, James cannot see me test my blood sugar unless he is literally standing in my doorway. It's not a communal style workplace. I do not test in common areas, only in my office. Update. I'm really glad I posted. It gave me the reassurance I needed that I was doing the right thing going to HR. I took your guys' advice on how to approach the conversation with HR. I said that me and my coworker have conflicting medical needs and I could use advice on a solution that would work for both of us. The HR lady said that I have every right to continue to test my blood sugar in my office. When I told her that James suggested I test only at specific times of the day, her eyes got really big and she was like, "No, do not test your blood sugar on a schedule suggested to you by your coworker, only your doctor." Later HR spoke to James as well. Here's what we agreed to with HR. James is to call me on the phone before coming to my office. As in, "Hey, can I come ask a question?" And I say sure and ensure I'm not checking my blood sugar at that moment. I cannot test my blood sugar in front of James. I wasn't doing this anyway. If James' phobia symptoms are triggered for whatever reason, he is entitled to a 10-minute break to let his symptoms subside, in addition to the normal breaks we all get. This system worked great for a week. One day he called as usual. I said sure, come over, but then he did and come over. After about 10 minutes I actually needed to check my blood sugar, but thought with my luck he'd walk in at the exact moment I was testing. I ended up calling him back and he said that he got distracted and forgot he had a question for me. A few days later it happened again, and I was a bit annoyed that twice I delayed testing because I thought he was going to be entering my office at any second. Soon after I found out that James had put in his 2-week notice. He explained that me being diabetic wasn't the only reason why he was quitting. He wanted different hours, etc., but that it did play a role. Later, Megan, our other coworker, told me that James told her that he really struggled with me being diabetic. For example, even just thinking, I need to ask a question, but I have to call first to make sure he's not checking his blood sugar was distressing to him because then he'd be thinking about it, which would make him feel queasy and anxious. James has quit now. While I'm relieved that I don't have to feel like a leper at work anymore, I mostly just feel bad for James. It must be awful living with a phobia that's severe, and I know he didn't choose to be that way. I hope he continues to see his therapist and can improve. So I guess this doesn't have a happy ending because ultimately we couldn't work it out and he quit. Not an idiot. Well, I'm glad that HR were so understanding of both sides and actually attempted to solve it for both of you. I'm sad to hear that he quit because of this, but maybe it's for the better. I hope he can get the help he needs to overcome this phobia, especially since it seems so severe that he couldn't work in the same place as someone who is diabetic. Not an idiot. I'm not one to downplay a phobia, but honestly, it seems like James was either expecting them to go further to accommodate him or is looking for a payout. I think this because if he needs to call you in order to make sure the coast is clear, then he should be in the process of actually going to see you. And what exactly does he need to ask that he couldn't have asked over the phone? Do you feel bad for James? Let me know in the comments. Now, am I an idiot for not explicitly telling my grandpa I'm married to another woman? My wife and I are both women in our late 22nd. We've been together for 4 years and got married this summer after getting engaged in the spring. Due to restrictions and personal preference, we did a courthouse wedding with each of our sisters as our maids of honor. It was a relatively simple affair and my wife and I are pleased with how low-key it was. Before we got married, I was not out to my extended family members. I was very close with my grandma and was afraid of how she might react. Sadly, she passed away shortly before our wedding, so she never got to know that my wife was more than a friend. I'm not very close to my grandpa, but I do try to call him once a week to chit-chat. He's very reserved and soft-spoken, so our convos are typically 5 minutes of fluff about work and the weather. I had introduced my wife to my grandparents. They met her a few times before my grandma passed away. They only knew her as my roommate, friend, as I wasn't out at the time. But I would tell my grandma about fun things we did together, and honestly I think she might have known that we were a couple. In retrospect, Grandpa probably didn't pick up on it because I'm not nearly as close to him as I was with her, so when we visited he would say hi and chat with us for a little bit before going into his workshop while we stayed with my grandma in the house. After the wedding, I decided I couldn't hide who I was any longer and posted our wedding pics to social media, saying that we had gotten married and I was happy to spend the rest of my life with the woman I loved. Many of my extended family reached out to congratulate us, and the overall response was very positive. For Christmas, we sent out Christmas cards to all of my relatives with our engagement and wedding. Fast forward to last week. My parents, siblings, wife and I stopped by to visit my grandpa and exchange presents, with masks on. When we got to his house I said, "Grandpa, you remember wife's name?" And he said hi and asked about her parents, and that was that. Everyone was sitting in a circle around the living room, sitting next to my wife on the couch with my arm on the back of the couch around her while we went around and everyone opened presents. I got a cookbook that my grandma had picked out for me before she passed and I started to tear up. My wife held my hand for a while to comfort me. The next day my mom reached out saying that my grandpa didn't know that my wife and I were together until he saw me hanging all over my wife. I'm sure these are my mom's words. I told her that I genuinely thought he knew, and that if someone hadn't talked to him about it after we posted it on social media he would have realized from the Christmas cards, which featured a close-up of the rings. He had asked my mom about it after the party and she had to tell him. She says it should have been from me. My mom told me it was my responsibility to tell him and that he shouldn't have found out that way. Am I an idiot for not specifically telling my grandpa I'm married to a woman? My mom said it isn't the end of the world, but I can tell she's kind of upset. My wife said that she didn't think any PDA we did have was not over the top and nothing my siblings wouldn't do with their SOs, who weren't present, and a friend said that it's not on me to make sure everyone knows about my marriage. Update. I just want to thank everyone who commented. I read through them all and it really helped me process the situation. I spoke with my mom a few hours the night after I posted, and she apologized for her comment about my wife and I hanging all over each other. I apologized for putting her in the situation she was in and that I genuinely thought that he had known. She basically said that it was okay, he knows now, and not to worry. She had talked to him and told him that we were together but didn't tell him we were married, which she said needed to come from me. I agreed. I said I was going to give him some time to process and reflect on things, and that I didn't want to reach out too soon before he was ready. I waited a week to talk to him, and that time an aunt of mine said she spoke with him. They spoke for a while and his general sentiment was that he was worried that we could lead happy lives together. Could we find a home? Could we have kids? Would we be able to keep our jobs? She said they had a really good talk and that she was able to reassure him of his worries. She told me I should talk to him and give him a chance to see how happy we are. This weekend I went to visit him. My aunt and mom came too. After we chatted for a while I told my grandpa that I had some news. I told him that my wife and I had actually gotten married this summer. I made it clear that it was a very small ceremony and that our parents couldn't even attend. And because of that we are planning on having a big wedding celebration in a year or two after COVID is over so all of our family and friends could celebrate. I explained that I was just nervous to tell him, and that I was worried what he would think. He said, "Well, I'm 85. My opinion doesn't matter." We talked a little bit more. I made sure to mention that we were very happy, and that our jobs knew and our neighbors knew when we bought our house. I also mentioned that my wife's parents went to the same college my parents and all my mom's siblings went to, and he thought that was pretty cool. I told him that I didn't have a chance to tell Grandma before she passed, and that I really miss her and had hoped she could see how happy we were together. We all had a little cry and talked about how much we miss her. The next morning, a different aunt called me and said that when she went and visited Grandpa he was all excited. "Did you hear we're going to have a big party after COVID? Opus is having a wedding celebration." She and I had a good talk and it sounds like Grandpa is doing well with the news and that everything worked out okay. No idiots here. I'm so glad everything turned out okay. I'm also very sorry about your grandmother. I was pretty much in the same situation where my grandmother passed before I could tell her my husband and I married. At her funeral, my aunt, who had been taking care of my grandmother, said that she asked and talked about me all the time and that she was glad I was living with someone I loved. Since she thought we weren't married she said we were so modern, which makes me laugh whenever I think about it. Even if your grandmother didn't know you were a couple, I'm sure she was happy for you anyway to be spending so much time with someone you love, even if she thought you were only friends.